Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the good will of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Acts chapter 4, verses 32 through 37. Now the whole group of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one claimed private ownership of any possessions, but everything they owned was held in common. With great power, the apostles gave their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was upon them all. There was not a needy person among them, for as many as owned lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what was sold. They laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to each as any had need. There was a Levite from Cyprus, Joseph, to whom the apostles gave the name Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He sold a field that belonged to him, and then brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet.
Do you remember what you dreamed about last night? Chances are, according to the latest research, you probably do not. Only about 1 in 10 of us can recall what we dreamed about the night before. Women are slightly better at recalling their dreams than men, and those under 30 are 4 times more likely to remember their dreams than the rest of us. But still, everyone dreams every single night. And if we can recall a dream, it's probably because we've dreamt it before, like many times. About 75% of adults have recurring dreams. I call recurring dreams repeat offenders. They tend to show up unannounced on the doorstep of our consciousness like little mafiosos in dark suits brandishing billy clubs and reminding us that we have some unfinished business in our lives to talk about. Do you have any recurring dreams? Some of the most common include being chased, returning to school, being unable to speak, taking a final exam that you didn't study for, having your teeth fall out, or the cruelest of them all, public nakedness, which never ever ends well, especially if in the dream you're a middle schooler riding your big yellow bus with your peers, or you're in a crowded elevator on your way to a meeting to close a big business deal, only to discover your humiliating wardrobe oversight. Some recurring dreams are less traumatic, like the one I have from time to time, which many others report having, which I've shared before, where I'm in my house, or a house I assume is my house, and I suddenly discover a room in that house that I've never actually been in before. In the dream, it's a room that has apparently always been there, only I never knew about it until now. Often the room is down a hallway or up a flight of stairs I've never explored before. And when I enter that new room, I discover all these fascinating things that are new to me: books, furniture, knickknacks, artifacts from my past. Sometimes when I walk into that room, I even meet all these really cool people who've been having a party all this time without me. And when they see me, they all stop whatever they're doing and they say, "Oh, hey, Mark, what's up? We've been waiting for you." And in the dream, I'm thinking to myself, how could I have lived in my house all these years and never known about this room? How could I have missed this? Have you ever had that dream? That dream, I have learned over the years, speaks to the nature of our unfinished lives. Maybe it's about those hidden recesses in our heart, our mind, even our memory, that we've neglected or avoided or rejected out of apprehension or insecurity or fear. Maybe it's about our unconscious curiosity or longing to discover something more than what we've known or experienced to this point in our lives. Maybe it's about a whole new reality that until now we just weren't ready for, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. We just weren't ready to experience it until now. Or maybe it speaks to the kind of world we long to live in, but do not know how to access from where or how we are living now. New rooms, a space to enlarge our lives, our human experience, our souls. It's what we all dream about in some way, isn't it? According to the book of Acts, the very first Christians shared this recurring dream a lot like that one. It was a dream so freely and joyfully shared by each other that eventually it became more than just a dream. It actually became their reality. The dream they shared was about living in a house together, so to speak, only that house didn't look or feel like any of the kind of houses anyone was living in at the time. Or maybe the real truth is that their dream was actually about a hidden room somewhere in the house of this world, a room which no one seemed to know about except for them, a refuge of peace from the violence and unpeace of their world, a sanctuary of generosity and grace and gladness amidst the greed and cynicism, the hatred that ruled their world. A social movement within their troubled world where they could be the leaven, the salt, the mustard seed that could transform their world. They weren't dreaming of an actual room, of course, like the kind with 4 walls and a ceiling. They were dreaming of something more like a community, a gathering of people who were so deeply committed to modeling their whole lives after the life and teaching of Jesus that they, as changed people, could change the whole world. And according to the book of Acts, they finally found it, that hidden, undiscovered room in the world, that alternative community they'd all been dreaming of. And they found such unity of heart and soul in that community that they sold their possessions, distributed the proceeds to the poor and all to those who were in need. And they spent time together in the temple and at the table, breaking bread with one another. And there was not a needy person among them, says Acts. No one was a stranger. They shared everything gladly, with generous hearts. And their way of life, it was so compelling. Their community was so attractive to the outside world that their numbers grew by the hundreds and then by the thousands. The early Christian community became that leaven, that salt, that tiny hidden mustard seed that transformed their world little by little. Where did they get this radical idea that putting others first and serving each other with glad and generous hearts and selling their possessions and sharing the proceeds so that no one would be in need, where did they get this radical idea of selfless, generous living that would be the leaven that would transform the world? Well, they got it, of course, from Jesus. The early Christians remembered that at the very heart of Jesus' teaching was this counterintuitive belief that true greatness is defined not by the power or authority we impose over others, by might or by force, but by the power we affect in the world through servanthood. In all 4 Gospels, Jesus unequivocally equates following him with serving others and being honored by humbling oneself. It's captured best maybe when Jesus says in the Gospel of Mark, you know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. Instead, he says, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. How does this work? How does becoming a servant get us anywhere in this power-grabbing world? Do you remember the wonderful film, The Princess Bride, about the beautiful girl, Buttercup, who is to be married to a cruel prince, but who is really in love with her servant, Wesley? It's a fairy tale which, in the film, a grandfather is narrating to his grandson one afternoon. Reading aloud, the grandfather says, "Nothing gave Buttercup as much pleasure as ordering Wesley around. 'Farm boy,' she says, 'polish my horse's saddle. I want to see my face shining in it by morning.' And Wesley replies, 'As you wish.' 'As you wish,' the grandfather says, was all Wesley ever heard her say. 'Farm boy, fill these buckets with water, as you wish,' Wesley says. 'Farm boy, fetch me that pitcher, as you wish,' he says. The grandfather reads on, "That day, Buttercup was amazed to discover that when Wesley was saying, 'as you wish,' what he was really saying was, 'I love you.' And even more amazing," says the grandfather, "was the day Buttercup realized that she truly loved him back." What Jesus believed and what the earliest Christians took to heart and centered in their community life was this radical idea that to serve someone is to say, "I love you." But over the last 2,000 years or so, what was once this underground Christian movement committed to an alternative way of living through humble servanthood has become nearly unrecognizable in America. The Spirit-led movement that began in Jerusalem grew rapidly. It spread first to Greece, where it quickly became a philosophy, emphasizing a particular way of thinking over a distinctive way of living, prioritizing logic over love. And from Greece, it quickly spread to Rome, where it became an institution of the empire and an acolyte of the emperor, emphasizing power and coercion over humility and servanthood, being first rather than being last. And once blessed with imperial power, Christianity quickly spread to Europe, where it became a culture emphasizing social approval and cultural uniformity over living distinctly as salt and leaven, settling for accommodation over transformation. And once blessed with cultural currency and social influence, Christianity then spread to North America, where its now diluted gospel was baked into the founding of a new nation, and Christianity became synonymous with national identity, aligning itself with America's ideals and agendas, even its patriotic spirit. So that today most American Christians find nothing problematic or questionable about a God bless the USA Bible that includes the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and Pledge of Allegiance, because the boundaries between God and country have been so blurred over the centuries. It's a far cry from that first community of believers in Jerusalem who committed themselves to a way of life defined by servanthood, humility, the voluntary sharing of their wealth, and glad and generous hearts. Throughout all these historical iterations of Christianity, it's remarkable that still beautiful, loving, and humble people and communities have emerged, even as the original Jesus movement surrendered more and more of its leaven and salt in exchange for power and privilege. For many today, it has become nearly impossible to distinguish between what it means to be a faithful Christian and what it means to be a good citizen. And there is this growing and highly energized movement in America today working very hard to fuse the two. Christian nationalism is a political ideology. It seeks to fuse Christian and American identities, contending that the U.S. was founded as a distinctly Christian nation, and that the government should then actively preserve this identity by promoting Christian values. Only those so-called Christian values are not Jesus' values. Jesus advocated a whole new social order, a liberating alternative to meritocracy, to the racial and religious values of supremacy, to the gender roles and patriarchy of our day and theirs, and the violence and militarism that has been such a part of Christianity. That alternative was servanthood and mutuality, generosity, selflessness, and nonviolence. And those early Christians we meet in the book of Acts, united by love and a shared spirit, embraced that vision, even died for it. They believed, as the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead said centuries later, that the transformative power of God dwells upon the tender elements in the world, which slowly and in quietness operate by love, and it finds its purpose in the present immediacy of a kingdom not of this world. And those early disciples and apostles, they found a little hidden room in this world where they made their home and lived as leaven, salt, light, trusting that even a tiny mustard seed has the power over time to change this troubled world. How do we practice that kind of transformative power in the world? The early Christians didn't reach for the levers of power or politics. In addition to sharing their resources and worshiping together in the temple, they practice the most radical of all practices, a shared table. According to Acts, in that so-called room was a table where, as it says, they broke bread and ate their food with glad and generous hearts. If there's one symbol of their commitment to this vision of servanthood and mutuality, this new social order, if there is one political act that subverted the existing social order of their day, it was practicing the open table. In the first century world, which was a shame and honor culture, dining hierarchy was serious business. The dinner table was the primary cultural and religious symbol of social order. The table revealed who was most important and most worthy, most powerful. At the dinner table, people were seated according to rank and status. The greatest, the honorable, they were seated at the head of the table, while those at the far end of the table, furthest from the host, these were the least important and powerful and influential. But according to the book of Acts, those early Christians all broke bread together and ate their food with glad and generous hearts. Like Jesus, they built a table where the deserving and the undeserving were given seat assignments, erasing all claims to meritocracy. They built a table where women could sit at the head of the table, erasing all claims to patriarchy. They built a table where Jew and Gentile could sit beside each other and pass the ketchup back and forth, erasing all claims to racial or religious supremacy. They built a table where the wealthy and the needy ate from the very same loaf and drank from the same cup. It was one of the most political statements of their day, an open table. In a world where everyone seemed to be building taller walls, those early Christians built a longer table, and they ate their food, it says, with glad and generous hearts. It reminds me of an article I read from David Brooks. He wrote it years ago in the New York Times. It was about his friends, Kathy and David, and their son, Santi, who lived in Washington, D.C. Santi had a friend who sometimes went to school hungry, so Santi invited his friend to occasionally eat and sleep at his house. And Santi's friend also had a friend who went to school hungry, and that friend had a hunger friend, and now every Thursday night at Kathy and David's house, there are 15 to 20 teenagers crammed around the dinner table. Some have endured homelessness, others hunger, abuse, assault. Almost all have seen death firsthand of a sibling, a friend, a parent. And when they gather around the table, they're invited to share their gifts. One of the boys reads a poem he wrote, another sings a song, another gives a short talk on engine repair. But the greatest gift they give to each other is their complete intolerance of social distance. Hugging is mandatory. And Brooks sums it up beautifully when he writes, "Souls are not saved in bunches. Love is the necessary force." This is the politics of Jesus in a time when so many are building taller walls. We are called by Christ to build a longer table where all can eat with glad and generous hearts. Our takeaways for today: Christian community is fashioned by servanthood, not power, affirming that whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. Transformation happens through tender love, not force, like leaven, salt, or a mustard seed. And finally, the politics of Jesus calls us to build longer tables, not taller walls, creating communities of inclusion, mutuality, and glad, generous hearts in a divided world.